and welcome back to another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. I am your host, Eric Fisher. This is the podcast where we talk to the people behind the productivity. This week, I'm talking with Tony Dilorenzo of OneExtraordinaryMarriage.com, which is also a podcast. In fact, the #1 marriage podcast on iTunes. They have over 200 plus podcast episodes. Staggering. Actually, what was cool was I was actually able to, this past weekend, in San Diego for Michael Stelzner's Social Media Marketing World, which was an awesome event, and I highly recommend you go check that out for next year. I was able to, on one of the afternoons, sneak out and go have lunch with Tony Dilorenzo and his wife, Alisa, as well as Dan Miller and Cliff Ravenscraft. And it was awesome. We went to this pizza place and ended up getting burgers. And this giant sundae. So I'll actually put pictures of a couple of these things, the sundae especially, in the show notes for this episode. You'll be able to find that at beyondthetodolist.com/63. Anyway, Tony and Alisa on One Extraordinary Marriage talk about all different types of things in regards to marriage. And Tony, as a listener of this show, knew very much how to connect some of the productivity things that have been talked about on this show into how they tie into relationships, whether with family, friends, etc., or especially in his case, with marriage. And so we have a really lively discussion about that. But before you listen to me talk with Tony, I want to let you know that this podcast is brought to you by Wrike, an app that will make your team's work both easy and stress-free. I know many people are always asking, all right, what's the best productivity app or best, online software for getting work done and doing productivity? And honestly, I need to tell people that it takes all different apps and all different things for different personality types. But what's great is with Wrike, your projects can always be on track, and you can be in sync with your team. So it's well worth looking at to go over to WRIKE.com. That's Wrike.com, WRIKE.com/to-do. And you can try, free for 30 days, a premium subscription of Wrike. And then that way you can try it out and see how it will help you get more things done together with your team. This week, I have Tony Dilorenzo on the episode, and he's here to talk about marriage. That's something we've not covered yet. Anyway, Tony, welcome to the show.
Thanks a lot, Eric, man. Very, very humbled and honored to be on your show today with you.
Well, you, as myself and our show, have been up in the top, rankings of the iTunes section that you are in, mine in business, but yours in marriage and family. So that's awesome. What's your show called and what is it about?
Yeah, so we have the #1 marriage podcast in kids and family, like you said. It's called One Extraordinary Marriage Show. And we talk about sex, love, and commitment in marriage. And I will have to say this, though, even though it's called One Extraordinary Marriage, it's exciting because we have a lot of singles and engaged folks who also listen to the show.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
And you've got a lot of how many episodes are you up to? You're like 100 something.
No, we released as of right now when we're talking, we released episode 209.
See, I knew it was more than I thought. I knew that there was like 100 something. I didn't know you'd crossed over into 200 something. That's awesome.
Yeah,
so that's
right at the end of last year we crossed 200.
Is it weekly or is it bi-weekly? Or like how many? In other words, with that many episodes, you've been doing it for a while. How long have you been doing it?
Just over 4 years. So we do it weekly.
Yeah.
We have never missed a show week. I cannot recall. This past Christmas, Alisa was actually taken off to Kenya for a missions trip. We hit episode 200, and then we were going to have 2 weeks between Christmas and New Year's. And right at the last minute, we just said, we can't go 2 weeks without it. And so we did 2 little vignettes, like two little short 15, 20-minuters to just sort of ring in the new year.
That's awesome. Well, good job on the consistency there. 'Cause that's people who listen to this show know that there's been 2 times where I've taken kind of a short break for a while. And those honestly, one of them I planned, the other I did not. And you know what? Life moves on. So
right.
But good on you for continuing to go that long. 4 years, man, that's great. I can't imagine where this show will be in 4 years.
Yeah.
Probably
well, here's the thing.
even further beyond the to-do list.
Yeah. And the cool thing for us, though, is because we talk about marriage, and one of our big areas is emotional intimacy.
Mm-hmm.
It's that connection you have with your spouse through conversation. This is a time for Alisa and I to sit down and talk about our life and our marriage and be open and transparent to everybody who does listen. So for us, it's a little twofold. For one, we're sharing with the world what's going on and how they can improve their marriage and make it extraordinary. And two, Alisa and I get to sit down and we get to talk as well.
Yeah, and there's the dynamic of that, the fact that you're having a public conversation between two people on the innermost, the intimacy and the vulnerability that would bring along with that having that conversation in front of an audience. And yet at the same time, you're not seeing the audience at the same time, but they're there and they're going to listen. Like, obviously the feedback that you get and the people that you're helping, obviously, because you've got a decent listenership. You've been doing it for so long.
Oh yeah.
So.
Yeah. I mean, worldwide, it's awesome when we get tweets and emails from like China, all over Europe, South America. It really is cool to impact people like that. Yeah.
I mean, that's what I've experienced in the shorter time that I've done this show. So that's really cool. It always feels good to know that something you've done is helping somebody else.
Oh, gosh, yeah. Love it. I love it. And for us, specifically being able to talk about sexual intimacy.
Yeah, because that's very much a taboo subject.
Right. Yeah, and to talk about it openly, honestly, and transparently, that's where it's really cool. Yesterday, I got a voicemail from a fellow out in Austin, Texas. A couple episodes ago, we talked about the fertility awareness method, which is a way to have sexual intercourse without contraception.
Okay.
But at the same time, you are using contraception during the height of ovulation. And it's something that Alisa and I have been playing around with. We're trying it out. And some guy called from Austin just saying, hey, I do natural family planning, which is no contraception. And I had some time in my day and I picked up the phone and was able to just talk to him a little bit more about it and how Alisa and I can implement this even better in our own marriage. So it's really cool because we're bringing awareness to things that most folks wouldn't even think about. And
I had no idea that was a thing. And I fully understand what you just described. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting,
Yeah, it is. It's totally cool. I came upon it from a good friend of mine, Dustin Riekman over at Engaged Marriage. And he does natural family planning. Alisa and I do fertility awareness method. So again, it's a way to open up that dialogue for other couples around the world who are maybe stuck. Contraception isn't working for them. In this particular instance, wife is on the pill. She's moody. It's really wreaking havoc on her system. Hey, maybe this is a way so it's not doing that. Husband may have a latex sensitivity, using a condom or something like that. It's going to impact them. So we're able to just bring that up, talk about it, start that conversation. So couples, what we hear from and have heard from, a lot of couples will listen to this together, our show together or separately. And then in the evening or when they have time during the week, they come together and they actually talk about these issues in their own marriage, which is just so awesome.
Yeah. What's funny is that to me, I'm listening to you talk about all these different – one, your stuff. And two, the fact that there's so much – strategy is not the word I want to use, but it's the closest, I guess, that I can get to that in the sense that you're talking about relationships. I don't like to use businessy sounding, words when it comes to relationships because that always makes it sound like my relationships are a project and and it just makes it stale and I don't know, like just unhealthy. It feels like you're managing. Yeah, when it comes to all the productivity buzzwords, a lot of them sound like business, and right. The quote unquote business of relationships does not make sense. Relationships are relationships, and so anyway, that's what's striking me when you're talking about this, and the fact that you're talking about thinking outside the box or gaining new knowledge or applying that to a situation and relationships, that's a whole other just application of how, almost the word holistic comes to mind. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally. The word I like to use most of the time is intentionality, or being intentional about what we want to do in our marriage and in our life. And it means a lot because, especially your show, and I listen to your show regularly, it's about business. But here's one thing. If you're not intentional in your marriage and what's going to happen, I'll bet you're not going to have the results you want in your business or in your job and where you're heading. Because the junk that's happening at home, you take over into your business, into your work. You do. We see people all the time. We work with folks all the time, and it has a profound effect. And so to be productive at the job or in the business, that home front needs to be solid as well. There has to be some intentionality there. What are we doing so that we're together at all aspects of life?
Yeah, we're whole people, and so the whole idea that, well, I'm going to succeed in just one area while all the others suffer it's a fallacy,
Right, and it's a balancing act.
Yeah. Yes.
Especially when you throw in the kids.
Yep. Yep. Yeah, I don't think I've said this on the show. I haven't recorded one since that happened. But a couple nights ago, my son comes into our room and we're doing the thing where we keep putting him back in his bed, and he's 2.5, and he just keeps doing it. He just keeps getting up and whatever. Well, this night he was crying when he came in, and I said, something's not right. So I said, don't worry about it. Just let him lay in here and I'll go on the couch. Well, my wife moves him to my spot. I had just pulled my pillow and was getting him one to replace it, and he starts puking, and I'm like, So everything's out the window at that point. And what do you do? Well, what's most important in that instance? Well, first and foremost, the relationships, mine with my wife, mine with my son, theirs as well. And also my daughter. It's all right, let's get this done and she can stay asleep. So
Yep, and I've been there. Mine are older now, so that helps a ton.
Let's go to that place before we touch more on marriage. And also I realize you're a huge fitness, I wouldn't say nut, but enthusiast is probably a better word. Let's talk on some of those. But let's do that question that I try to ask everybody, and sometimes I forget. So in an ideal world, how do you start your day if you're not talking to somebody on a podcast like you are now?
I'm sleeping in. I like to sleep in. And sleeping in to me is like 6:30-ish. Unless I'm doing some cycling or fitness stuff. But typically I'm sleeping in. I do like to just sort of get up. If it's the school day, it's being able to just hang here with the family, the kids. I will say, folks, it's not pretty all the time. There is, there's kids going back and forth, and it's not the greatest. But I would say during the week, Monday through Friday, I'd say 2 to 3 of those days, maybe even 4 days a week, we end up all sitting down for breakfast together. And even though we may be, trying to get kids and going, I do enjoy that time. And that's the way my day usually starts. Right after that, once the kids are gone, I'm sort of a guy who likes to just hit my emails real quick, get them off my plate. So I tend to do that. And in an ideal world, I'd do that as well. I mean, I would just knock those things out. And then I like to get into the bulk of my workday, which is just going after specific projects that need to get done, jobs that need to get completed. Because One Extraordinary Marriage is both Alisa and I, there is a lot of conversation that goes back and forth. And I enjoy that time with her. And towards the end of the day, it's sports with the kids, activities. We always sit down for dinner together unless one of the kids is at a friend's place. And then at night, I tend to just that's my time to read. I like to just go to bed and read. And currently right now, my big thing is just taking 10 minutes a night minimum and just going through my Bible. And I started in the Old or the New Testament, and I just 10 to 20 minutes a night, I just read and usually just fall asleep by 10:30, maybe 11 o'clock, depending on what I had doing and what I had to complete after the kids went to bed. So
nice. So then, I know you're very into fitness. Where are you fitting that in?
Okay, so it's winter right now while we're doing this, and so cycling is my big thing.
Okay.
I've been a big cycling enthusiast since I was 14 years old. Done many 100-mile rides. I've done double centuries, which are 200-mile rides in a day. So what ends up happening is weekends are my big time. So I'll get up in the morning. Wintertime, it's a little later. Summertime, I can be up and on the bike as early as 5 a.m. And as the spring and summer hit during the week, I'll do that 2 times a week. It warms up, and I tend to like that a little bit more. On top of that, if I'm doing some sort of at-home workout, I'll do that either in the morning. But as I've gotten older, I tend to like to do that right before dinner time or about an hour before dinner time because my body is it's just warmed up from the day. It is harder, and I do have to self-motivate myself because it's very easy after the day to just go, let me just go sit in front of the computer and do nothing. But my workouts are concise. If I'm doing them at home, they're 30 minutes, they're quick. So I always know that in the back of my mind. It's like, it's 30 minutes, let's get this thing done. And I love it. Cycling, though, is my passion, and you can catch me out on the road on a Saturday or Sunday for a long ride up to like 4 hours right now. And that's just tooling around San Diego County, this North County area, which is just absolutely gorgeous, and hit the coast, and I just love it.
Nice.
Yeah.
How is it? Do you view your physical stuff as kind of a solo individual thing where it's, dad is getting himself, in shape so that I can be there for everybody else, or does the rest of the family kind of join in on that?
Cycling is me.
Okay.
Me and my buddies. Yeah. And it's changed over the years. I used to go out with a lot of guys. Lately, I'm more solo, and on the weekends, if it's a longer ride, I'll connect with some guys. But more, it's just me. It's me being able to just get out. I think exercise, no matter what you do, even if it's for a half an hour walk around during your lunch break, I think it's vital, and we miss this point that it's a time to just sort of let our minds wander to wherever they want to go. I mean, I've been on the bike before where I am just struggling with business and what we're doing and how we're impacting people's lives. And I mean, I've been out there before. I'm just mad almost, excited and like mad, and tears will be just streaming down my face. And it's just like, I got it all out.
Yeah.
And it's not just work. It could be, tensions between Alisa and I, or the kids and I. And I just let it out, and I'm able to come back home and just go, everything's good. When it's at home, Alisa and I tend to work out together, and that's fun. But I will have to say this, if you do work out with your spouse and you're like, gosh, this is sort of weird, you're going to have some good conversations because Alisa doesn't like to talk at all. Like, she just wants to work out. And I'm an encourager. Like, when I'm out there riding my bikes and I'm with my buddies and we're doing this gnarly climb and we're to the top almost, I'm the one going, all right, guys, we're there. We're almost there. Let's push it. Let's go. When I'm working out with Alisa, she doesn't want to hear that sort of stuff. So I had to learn that because it just like frustrates her. She's like,
yeah,
just be quiet, Tony. The guy's talking on the DVD. Let me listen to him.
And that's the thing for me is like kind of going back to what I said about there's the difference between personalities and styles and all of that. And that's why there's just something to be said about why business, quote unquote, business practices or what's the word? Not precepts, principles. There it is. Like business, quote unquote, business principles or productivity principles. They can apply to personal relationships, but at the same time, sometimes it's really just about the relationships.
Right. Well, here's a for instance, real quick, and it's something that we've talked about for many years on our podcast. It's called scheduling sex. And that sounds very businessy.
Yeah, it does.
Doesn't it? I mean,
yeah, it really does.
I need to schedule my meetings. I need to schedule an appointment with so-and-so. Heck, you and I getting on this show together today, we had to schedule time.
It took some work too.
Right. But we're all about intentionality. So one thing we started 4 years ago, it's called the Intimacy Lifestyle, and it's about scheduling sex. It's about putting sex on the calendar so that both you and your spouse are on the same page. Because if not, life can just happen, and that doesn't happen. And so it's a great, I could talk about it forever, but folks can go over to episode 140.
Okay.
That's the episode show.
I'll throw that in the show notes, because that's definitely a touchstone to go back to. But some people who aren't as comfortable talking about, say, sex, if you back off that a little bit and say, okay, what's a different type of aspect of a relationship that's important that maybe you could schedule instead, or at least get your mind around why it's important to schedule. So let's go with date nights. Everybody would agree date nights are important, or even hanging out with your buddies, if you're single. That scheduling that has to happen, or it won't end up happening.
And we see it all the time.
It's the intentional use. Yes. It's the intentional action towards planning that thing to actually happen. So
exactly. And Alisa does all of our coaching here at One Extraordinary Marriage, and she's working with a couple right now who they have not been on a date. I think it's been over 2 years.
Oh,
and
wow.
one of her assignments to them was, I want a list from each of you with 10 things you want to do on a date. Could be a daytime date, a nighttime date, whatever. I want 10 things that you guys want to do together. They could cost money. They don't have to cost money. And then she also challenged them. And when I say challenge them, she, because they haven't gone on a date for 2 years. Hey, I need you guys to tell me who's going to watch your kids, because that's a big hiccup for a lot of couples. It's like, well, I don't have anybody to watch the kids, this, that, and the other, da, 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 da. And so, again, putting those date nights down, being intentional about it, even if it's just once a month, making it happen.
Yeah. That's cool. Yeah, I like that idea. What are some of the other – I know you listen to the show, so what have been maybe some of the things that you've heard on my show that you've then said, I'm going to try and apply that back to what I talk about with marriage and family and relationships?
Oh, man.
Not to stump you, but
yeah. One of my big things that I continuously hear a lot of folks on the show talk about is how they plan out their day. And I just love that. And and I'm working on it more and more, but where they're really intentional about, okay, for this block of time, I'm doing this. For this block of time, I'm doing that. For this block of time, I'm doing this. And so being able to talk to our audience about, okay, what does that look like for you guys in your marriage? How do you block out time? Now, it's not on a daily basis like it is for business productivity, going, hey, I got a product that needs a launch, or I need to write articles, or I need to do a podcast. But what time are you blocking out in your calendar to do specific things together? Is it your spiritual intimacy? Do you guys want to pray together? Do you guys want to read a devotional together? Is that a daily activity for you guys, or is it a once a week activity? So where are you finding that time in your calendars? That's one of the things that always strikes me when I'm listening to the show, when there are some amazing folks that you bring on that they're very, very, very diligent and stick to that so that they're continuously progressing forward in their business and their life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's to place those milestones in there, or those mile markers, I guess is a better word, because it's always forward momentum. And so by continuously having, okay, here's me consistently doing this thing over and over because it propels me forward, or propels all these different things I'm doing forward, we'd be remiss to not think that intentional use of time for specific outcomes when it comes to our relationships would be just not something we think about. And honestly, it does for a lot of people. It falls by the wayside, where it's just like, oh, well, it's just home life. Like I'm just glad that I'm not at work, or if you're somebody who doesn't work in an office, I'm done. I've clocked out, so to speak, from my laptop, and hopefully you put your phone down. But that they think, okay, good, I'll just sit back and enjoy family. And and honestly, there's nothing wrong with that. But I wonder if there's something more that couldn't be had from your relationships any of them, if you weren't intentional about what you wanted to get out of them or give to them even.
Right. You're always pouring in, and it's two people, and there's so much that's going on. And so one thing Alisa and I always say is, hey, your spouse doesn't have ESP. So, can't read your mind. You may be all gung-ho about getting fit and healthy, and you haven't brought it up to your spouse. So when you come home from Whole Foods with, 4 bags of, granola and Greek yogurt, they're taken aback and they're going, what are we doing here? And so we're all about, hey, make sure you have those conversations. Those are being intentional. Again, let's have these conversations so that we're both moving forward and we're on the same path. And maybe you're not right where I am right now, but I want to make this change, and I'm gonna start doing this. But I want you to have the heads up.
Definitely, and I've been guilty of doing that myself personally. So,
so have I.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, I'm doing this diet.
Yeah.
Or I'm gonna work out. I've decided I'm gonna work out every morning. Okay, see ya. Yep. It's just anyway, and that's one of the things for me is just it sometimes I get there's the tension between doing, again, the quote unquote business of the relationship, but then also forgetting that we're both on the same team in terms of our house being, a unified team in and of itself, and that sometimes even scheduling in how to do as a team the business of the house itself, managing and running, paying the bills or doing the budget and things like that are also, a team sport, but it's not necessarily like us having like non-parent time or you know what I mean? Like you end up being roommates instead of a couple.
Yes, and I totally know it. I mean, I know we've been on the show here for probably going into 20 minutes or so, but just for you folks, I mean, I've been married 17 years. Alisa and I almost got divorced twice. I had an addiction to pornography. We lost a child. We've been roommates. I know that feeling. Yeah. I mean, we've gone through that, and it's just through being intentional and trying new things, being open-minded, talking, really breaking down our communication barriers that we've been able to continuously succeed and honestly have a happier marriage life now, 17 years in, than we did probably 3 or 4 years in. And that's the cool thing, is that you can have an amazing marriage and an amazing life with your spouse later in life. You may be struggling right now going, man, it's never going to change. It can. I've been at lows, man. I've been when the economy tanked and we had to short sell our house, and I felt like a complete and utter failure, and I didn't want to get out of bed in the morning. I mean, that impacted our marriage. That impacted everything that I had to do. And it was just through time and talking and being on that same page and taking time, going, hey, Alisa going, hey, we need to get out of the house. Let's go on a date. Let's just go for a walk. We don't need to spend money, get it, but let's just get out to the beach. Let's just go smell the salt water. Let's just dig our feet into the sand. Let's go. And so, yeah, it's not clean. It's not perfect. It's dirty. It's messy. And yet at the same time, it can bring you some of the most joy and exhilaration that you'll ever have.
Yeah. Yeah. Relationships aren't something you can systemize, but you can definitely be intentional.
Yes.
The messy, you said messy, and that's like, yep, there you go. Yep, that's what relationships are.
Yeah. And then you throw the kids in and everything else, and in-laws and outlaws and, friends and all that. And, all I can do is set up good boundaries and be intentional about what we're doing each day and keep moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is there any other application that you often have to try and tell people about in terms of just being intentional with their relationships? One of the big things is that we like to talk about when it comes to being intentional is, are you living your life from the top down?
Like, what are your priorities in your life? Because if work is the number one priority in your life and then your spouse is like number 5 on the list, well, you're going to have some issues. So how are you bringing your spouse up that list? What are you doing intentionally? What are you doing so that you guys and she or him are on top of that list? And I'm not talking about hours, because obviously we're working 40, 50, 60 hours a week. And yet you can still spend 3-4 hours with your spouse that overcomes all of that time. So it's something that we talk about from the top down. It's, putting God first, your marriage second, your spouse second, your kids third, work fourth, and then other activities last. And if those are all mixed up and all over the place, and you can look at your calendar and go, wow, 95% of my week is spent doing, stuff with kids, work, and other activities, and I only have 5% left for my wife and for God. There's some stuff that we need to adjust, and we need to look at your calendar and go, okay, when are you going to find that time? When are you going to be out there and, getting in the Word? Or are you in a small group with some guys or some women or a couple small group? And when are you spending time with your wife? When are you spending time with your husband?
Yep. Or when are you going to find the time to find the time? Because we all feel like, all right, well, I'm juggling all those things already. How do I even have time to recalibrate my priorities and then find the time to act on that the appropriate way?
Here it is. Stop the glorification of busy. Stop it. I'm done. I'm so tired of hearing people all over the place. How you doing? I'm busy. Well, what does that mean? You're busy. Stop the glorification of busy. You sitting on Facebook or Twitter for 30 minutes is not busy. That's you doing nothing. So when you're trying to find time, stop the glorification of busy, because I'm sure of it that you can find 30 minutes in your day to sit down and talk to your spouse. No kidding. I know I can at times, and I will pull it, and I just have to tell myself, stop the glorification of busy. You're not that busy. Honestly, you're not. That's a choice that I'm making. And if that's the choice you're making, then that's the choice you're going to live out. But if you choose to find 30 minutes to sit down with your spouse and go, hey, you know what, honey? You know what? We need to just sit down. We need to look at this calendar so we can get a date night on the calendar. You're going to do it, and you're going to stop that glorification of busy.
Yep. That's actually probably a good thought to land on for this episode, you think?
Yeah, because it is. Because intentionality means we're not going to always say we're busy doing something else.
Yeah, it's taking control. It's deciding. It's choosing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So choose to be intentional. Choose to stop saying you're busy. Choose to stop being busy. And that may take many, many different forms for many different people. But
and for some of you, it may mean you know it too. Sometimes it's just sitting down and being able to read for 10 minutes. I mean, I don't consider that being busy. I consider that being able to, increase your knowledge in something else, turn everything else off, And in our society today, so much is going on in our minds and moving and, getting into fitness, going for a walk. Man, that sort of stuff isn't busyness to me. To me, that's rejuvenating time. That's when you're out there and you are going, yes, I am just rejuvenating myself, and I'm letting everything else go by the wayside, and I'm going to just hone in on me for a little bit.
Yeah, go for a walk without a podcast or music in your ears.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally. Just go and listen, and I do that on many rides, and then there are rides when I'm by myself and I have my music on, my techno. But there are times when I'll just go for an hour, 2-hour ride, and I won't have anything on. I just roll and just hear the wind in my ears or whatever is coming around. And it's amazing how much you can just center yourself.
Awesome, man. Tony, thank you so much for being on the show. Where can people find you and your show?
Yeah, best place, oneextraordinarymarriage.com. So I know that's long, but oneextraordinarymarriage.com. You can Google it. You'll find us there. Facebook, it's the same thing. And on Twitter, I'm at Tony M. Dilorenzo.
Nice. Well, I'll put all the links to this in the show notes so people can find your show, find you, and get connected with that if they want to further this conversation, which I highly encourage them to do. Again, Tony, thank you so much for being on the show. It's been awesome.
Thank you so much, Eric. And thank you all for your time. Way appreciate it.
Well, that wraps up another episode of Beyond the To-Do List. Thanks again to Tony DiLorenzo for stopping by. Make sure to go check out oneextraordinarymarriage.com to check out his site and his show that he does with his wife. It is truly extraordinary. And again, help support this podcast by checking out our sponsor at Rike.com/to-do. That's WRIKE.com/to-do and grab a 30-day premium subscription for free to the Rike Productivity Team software. Thanks again for listening to this episode. Hey, if you're enjoying this show, pass it on social media or go to iTunes at beyondthetodolist.com/iTunes and leave us a rating or a review. Thanks again, and we'll see you next episode. Beyond the To-Do List is a proud member of the Noodle.mx Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts to make you think, laugh, and succeed at Noodle.mx. Learn how to podcast, theorize over the TV shows Once Upon a Time in Wonderland, and Under the Dome. Laugh with our clean comedy, delve into science fiction and philosophy, learn critical thinking from movie reviews, and more at Noodle.mx.